Dad, but his yahrzeit is Sukkot, and I told most of my family about this like 25 minutes ago. I'm exaggerating, but so my daughter and her husband are here, and my wonderful friend Judge Lee, who is one of the first Orthodox judges in New York, maybe in America, maybe the world. You know, we're gonna have to check that out. And I am not going to wait. We have a lady from another cousin from the Beaker home of Salver. He's supposed to show up, but I really just want to do this and do it quickly for my father. So let me tell you a little bit about him. What I have here is in really great shape is a copy of the Matzeva, what it says on the Matzeva, and on my dad's Matzeva. It said, here lies somebody who is on bended knee, shefel verach, which means humble. The literal translation is bended knee, but it actually means humble. And then it goes on, his name was Pinchas Elimelech, and his father was, you know, they go through the whole genealogy. His father was the Rosh Bestin of Yora in Czechoslovakia. His father was the Rav in the town Usharad. His grandfather was the Rugat Habosam, and then his great-great-grandfather was Rebbe Elimelech, who we all know is the writer of the Noam Elimelech. Yeah. So the DNA my dad was walking around with was pretty good, and he pretty much fit the wonderful aspects of all of these people. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm here, and it's Rabbi Nachman's yahrzeit. And what does it say about my father? It says he lifted up the ruach shvalim. He lifted up the ones whose hearts were broken. My father did. The lev nidachim, and the people who were just sad and just unhappy and just lost souls. That his mission in his life was always to lift them up. And I'm not going to read the Hebrew because I'm going to mispronounce it. But basically that's what my dad did. And and I'm thinking, gee, here I am, and it's Rabbi Nachman, that's what Rabbi Nachman says to do also. So I'm not going to go into a lot of stuff about my dad, but I'll tell you, you know, Shlomo used to say, we get to people by stories, and who was the greatest storyteller in the world? God. And I'm sure you all remember stories that you learned as a kid, and much more than you'll remember the lesson. It's the story or the teacher who gave it over. So, first of all, my father was a survivor of the Budapest, the war in Hungary, the war against the Jews. He worked with George Soros. I don't know if you know who that is. Yeah. Okay, everybody here knows who he is. So George Soros worked for the Jewish Council in Budapest, and so did my dad. My dad and George Soros went on to become a wealthy man, and my father, thank God, did well, but never had an interest in looking up good old George. They were both the same age when they worked for the Jewish Council. What my father did is, because he looked a Gentile, he was blonde and blue-eyed, and you know, sort of had like a cool manner. I don't know what they called it then, but now we call it cool. And he would buy ID papers for Jewish kids who were in hiding, and then give it to the Jewish Council, and the Jewish Council would give it out to the Jewish kids. And he saved a lot of young people. And the other thing he did is, because he was also able to speak a few languages, which was no big deal, because he lived in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia turned into Hungary, then it turned into Ukraine. So, you know, you got to speak 7 languages by the time you were 12. So he would take a wagon and to get the kids out of Hungary. On the wagon there was lots of hay. He pretended to be a farmer. The kids would go under the hay, and they would go past the border and go to Romania. Many times the soldiers would want to see if there's anything under the hay, and they would put pitchforks in, And my father just sat there, like real cool. And so sometimes, it was terrible, but they never found anybody. When the war was over, we all came to America and life went on. But it was, life went on as it did. And my father had open heart surgery at a very young age because of what happened in Hungary. If you had, at that time, if you had strep throat and you didn't have an antibiotics, it went into rheumatic heart disease. And rheumatic heart disease then goes into valve damage. I mean, like I'm sure there's 10 doctors here, so I hope I said that right. So, very young age, he had heart surgery, but thank God he was okay till he was 72, which is when he passed away. So I'll tell you one story about him. He was in the hospital and it was having his second heart surgery. He must have been like in his late 60s. And I remember going to visit him. Lee, can you hear me talking about? Can we make this louder?
I'll have to ask.
I'm trying to get my friends to hear. Hello. Okay, I'll try this. Yeah. Okay. So my father was in the hospital. It was Columbia, and it was like the third day after they put in a mitral valve. Yeah. So he's lying in bed, and I'm coming to visit him, and I see a young man. Looks like a soccer young man. Has a beard. Must be 21 years old. With his mother. The young man is in a wheelchair. My father did not look like a soccer. By the time he was in his 60s, he had grown a short beard. So you could see he was Jewish. You could see he's Orthodox because he wore a black hat. And but it did, he wasn't with a kaftan. He looked like a regular guy. So the young man only wanted to go talk to my father. So the mother's going, "Why do you want to talk to him?" He says, "I want to talk to him. He's in Simcha." So I'm there, and the mother can't be more than 35, and she wheels her son into my father's room. Now I'm standing there with my aunt, and the boy starts talking to my father that he's depressed, he doesn't know if he's going to be okay. My father stands up, gets out of bed, and he says, "Come on, we're going to dance." He takes his hand, he takes this young man's hand, he takes his sister's hand, who's on the other side, and the mother of this young boy gets in the like the two, a man and a woman shouldn't touch. And my father makes like a ring around a rosy thing, and he starts doing Aizaria La Tzadik. Like I had never heard my father sing that song, but apparently it was like very hot at the Satmar Yeshiva where this boy came from. And they're doing this for 10 minutes until the nurses and doctors hear all these things go beeping off, and they come in. Now my father did that not for himself, not because he was crazy about the tune, but he did that because on an intrinsic level, an inherent level, my father knew more about psychology and more about human nature than anybody I've met. And he knew, like I don't know if he had just read Nachman, but he knew that people needed to be joyful. And the reason it was so easy for him to lift broken hearts is because he was brokenhearted. And he fought it, like Reb Nachman. And the reason he knew that that's what people needed is because he needed it. So he would always tell me what the Piatzner, Eish Kodesh, said. Zisi, Ruchala, he would say, the biggest thing in the world is to do another Jew a favor. And he did it all the time. I mean, that really was his mission. And I look back now and I think, what an incredible gift he gave me, because when I was doing the work that I wanted to do, I found myself doing Bikur Cholim, and I realized, why am I doing this? Like, it's so depressing, and you have to be upbeat. And every time I come out of the hospitals, I get a migraine, I get a headache, because you gotta act happy and spunky and, hey, how you doing? Like everything's great. But, you're using parts of yourself that are not wanting to be used because you're so sad. My father did this for 20 years, and I'm grateful that he taught me, and I'm grateful that he taught me that the biggest thing in the world is to do another Jew a favor, because it is very much part of who I am, what I taught. My daughter, my son, they're like that. I hope their spouses are like that, because there's nothing higher. There's nothing higher than to connect on a level of another human being. It's higher than anything, and my father found that, and he never worshipped, as they say, the golden calf, which is today the god of money. And his life was led in a way that I will always be proud of, and always will feel tremendous honor for and pride that this was my father. So I don't know how to say it, but my father's neshama. Can you help me with that one?
Should have an aliyah.
Should have an aliyah.
What's his name again?
Pinchas Elimelech. Oh, because his Zayda was Elimelech. Right. So Elimelech, and his mother was Raquel.
And his father's?
And his father was Yekutiel Yehuda.
Pinchas Elimelech ben Yekutiel Yehuda. Shama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
He's supposed to be Menachem and his wonderful family.
Thank you very much, and I'm really glad to be here in this shul, because everybody here knows that the most important thing is to do each other's favors, because I see it all the time. So I thank you, and